Hello friends, my name is Theo, and today in this exciting part 2 of our how to advect particles based on the velocity fields generated by a pyro simulation in Houdini tutorial, we are going to be just making it look a little bit prettier and nicer. So the first part of the tutorial is really where all the meat and potatoes are happening, and this is actually going to be less of a tutorial, more of just a walkthrough of making something that looks a little more mom's fridge worthy than what we made last time. Not that what we made last time isn't just great and fantastic, but we can make it a little, I don't know, different and nicer. So definitely watch the first part if you haven't already. That's the good one. This one's just going to be a good time. So the first thing I notice is I don't want the particles exploding in all these directions. I just want them to be sort of going up. So right now we know that they're being emitted from the same sphere that our pyrosim is being emitted from. But maybe I just want a plane above it that our particles will be birthed on and then sort of thrown up in the air. Sort of like they're sitting on top of the explosion as opposed to being a part of the explosion. So we'll create a new geometry node for this, and we'll call this grid emitter, and dive in and grid and transform and null, and this null we'll just call out grid emitter, and we will transform this down about that size, and we will translate it up. Maybe about there. That looks good. Maybe even a little bit smaller. 0.7. Cool. So now we've got that, and now we can hop back into our DOP simulation, and we'll change our pop source from our sphere to our new grid emitter, out grid particles. And there we go. If we play this through now, you can see, nice, we're just getting them on the top, and that's looking pretty cool. And if we keep playing this through, we'll see how this looks. That's looking pretty nice. I probably don't need that many particles, so we'll go to our birth. Change this from 5,000 to like, or this is impulse. Change it from 1,000 to something like 300. And we also don't need this born right at the beginning. So we can actually, you see we've got 1, 2, 3, got like 5-ish frames before our flame front interacts with our particles. So we can change this to $FF equals 5. So they emit on the 5th frame just to speed things up a little bit. There we go. You see now they're born right before they get exploded. There we go. And that's looking pretty good. Another thing that I want to do that I really probably should have done in the first tutorial is you see that these aren't really following the position as much as I would like them to. I really want more curliness to happen. And in order to make them follow the position, we can do that. So we go to pop advect by volumes and change the advection type from update force to update position. Now, if we go through and simulate this again, see now they're following the actual sort of shape of the explosion a lot better, which I like a lot more. I think that makes it look a lot more like an explosion happening. Got these nice little curly cues happening. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. So now I think we've got our particles looking a little more how I want them to. One other thing, you see that our flame front is sort of getting clipped off here. We can change that by going over to our resize container. And we can change our max bounds. And we can turn on enforce boundaries. Now you see that's resized our container some. Let's make sure that works. And actually you see it's not dynamically resizing, so we'll just unconstrain the positive Y. And now, look at this. It's doing a much better job of resizing. Oh, maybe not. It's still a little bit clippy. If we turn off clamp to maximum. Let's see if we can add a little bit of padding here. Go ahead and pause that. Re-enable that. Bounds. Upper padding 3. There we go, that's looking better. Let's make sure that it keeps looking better as, yep, this continues to grow. Nice. I think we've got a winner there. So you see, really looks cool whenever you change this to update the position as opposed to just the force. Oh, this is still clipping at the top. Try this again. And you can see why I put the look development stuff in a different part of the tutorial than the functional part, because this is just a lot of clicking one thing and then waiting a few seconds while it cooks and then clicking it again. Yeah, this looks like it's getting us what we want. Nice. So go ahead and pause this, and now we can go to our particle trails. You see, we've got our old one here. That's because we've got our file cache. So if we do no operation, we've got our new one. You see, this is I don't know. I think this is a really cool look. All these swirlies as opposed to what we had before, which is a little more chaotic and, it's not as nice. Change to no operation. This is much more of what I was going for. And I probably like even more particles than this, but maybe whenever we export, I'll just crank the particle count way up. For now, I don't even need to write the files for this, because we're just going to split these up into two different groups. So whenever I get these into the render, I want some to be emitting light and the others to just be sort of diffuse material. So we need to split these up into two groups. And the way I'm going to do this is just with a primitive wrangle. So if we go down here, what was this guy doing? Yeah, that's important. So primitive wrangle, and we'll drop this in. And primitive wrangles, of course, loop over all the primitives. And in here, we're going to want to add just sort of certain ones to a group. So in order to do this, we're going to use our prim ID that we made before. So if we check our geometry spreadsheet, we go over to our primitives. So you have this prim ID attribute. And so we'll write if at prim ID mod, we'll say something like 5. And we could probably make this into a slider, but I think 5 will be fine, is equal to 0. And the modulo operator means if it can evenly be divided by 5. So if the prim ID is 5, 10, 15, 20, so basically every fifth of these will be in this new group. You can change this to 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever else your little heart desires. And now in here, the thing we're going to do is set prim group to access geometry 0. We're going to name this light because these are going to be the strands that glow. The geometry that we're going to add is the current prim num 1 and set. And the 1, I believe, means true. There we go. Set prim group. We are taking geometry from this input. We're putting into this group called lights. We are taking the current primitive that we are running through, and all that is true. So now if we go to our geometry spreadsheet, we should see, yep, group lights. And you see 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. And you see if we change this to something like 6, look at that, it changes. 6, 12, 18. So if you're in like 3rd grade or something doing homework, you can use Houdini to do your math homework for you. Look at that. It's probably not the way you should be doing it, but if I was your teacher, I'd definitely give you bonus points for doing your homework in Houdini. But I'm not your teacher, so boo-boo. All right, so now we've got that going, and now we'll split these off into 2 different groups. So we'll do that by using a blast node here and lights to the group. If we change this to delete non-selected, and I give us our lights group, you see these are the particle trails that are going to be lighting up in the end. And if we copy and paste this and just flip this guy off, this will give us our other ones. And now we'll give each of these their own poly wires, because I want the lights to be a little bit sort of beefier than the other ones. So there's that. 0.3. Let's make those a little thinner. 0.2. Now if we view both of these, you see we've got our whole mess of spaghetti here. So in order to separate these out, we'll add 2 nulls. And this one will be out lights. And this one will be out spagoot. And then whenever we export this as an alembic, which you can only do in the Houdini licenses that aren't the Apprentice one. So if you're using Houdini Apprentice, sorry, you'll have to render in Houdini, but I'm lazy and I want to render in Blender. Or not that I'm lazy, I'm just, you know, I like cycles a lot. So we've got our particle trails, which will be our lights particles. We could rename that if we wanted to, but nah, this will be spagoot. And object merge will be how we get this in. So particle trails, out spagoot. Nice. So now we've got everything that we need inside Houdini. Got our 2 different trails. We'll just turn off all this other stuff that we don't need. Guess that's looking good. So I think I will change 2 more things. I'm going to make our grid emitter into a smaller circle. So just wire this in. Let's go back to the beginning, change this to the ZX plane. It's a good size. And then I'm also going to change our pyro sim and give us some more particles. So make these, you know, something 1200 should be about right. Also something I want to do, let's go ahead and simulate this just for a little bit. Yeah, that's looking nice. And the last thing I want to do is see how these get a little bit jaggy whenever stuff has, you know, some more time. We could subdivide this in Blender, but I'm just going to not do that and instead resample in here. And let's view our points. Just give us a whole big old mess of points. 0.025, 0.02. And I'm pretty sure that there is a way to sort of resample this more dynamically, but that's not something that's in my brain right now. So we'll just call this smooth enough. And this will make our thing a lot slower because we've got a lot more polygons, but you know, that's why we spend a bunch of money on computers, right? Nice, so that's looking nice and stringy and cool. I'm liking that a lot. We've got, I might even make fewer lights particles just since we're here. So we can do that by easily going in here and changing this from 5 to maybe every 10. We'll make a light particle or light trail. There we go. Nice. And I'm liking what's going on here. To now export this as an alembic. So file, export alembic. You're going to export the whole frame range. And we could export everything and be fine, but I'm going to export spagoot and particle trails, accept pattern. We're going to save this as power lines tutorial underscore hip out.abc, hip out 1. It's important to enumerate, accept, and export. And now this will take a little bit. So, I mean, it won't take that long, I guess. But I'll let this run, and then we'll open up Blender and finish this bad boy off. All right, so now our thing is all exported from Houdini, and we're in Blender 2.82. So if you are using this in real life, obviously go with a more stable version, but since this is playtime, I gotta play around with new Blender. So File, Import, Alembic, and here's O2, Import, and now you see, you get all sorts of good stuff here. So we can delete our curves that we don't need. And nice. Look at how, goodness, how good this looks. Way better than the tests I did even. Look at this. Curls at the bottom. Very cool. All right, so now we'll go ahead and add a couple materials here. So let's rename this to lights. And then we will pull this off to the side and hit Shift F3 and add a new texture. We'll set this to emission. There we go. And let's see what this looks like in Eevee. We should be able to render this whole thing in Eevee since it's a little MoGraphy. There we go. Let's change our world color to black. Let's turn off our overlays. All right, so change our Eevee settings some. Screen space reflections. And this to be on transparent. Ambient occlusion. There we go. Nice. It's starting to look good. Look at all these curls in there. Gosh, those curls are nice. All right, now let's add a material here. Let's bring subsurface up some. Base color, blue. Let's see, do we need to bake our indirect lighting? Nah. Shadows, high bit depth. What else am I missing here? Just need to try turning this way up. I mean, that looks cool, but so to be perfectly honest, I don't use Eevee very often. It's great, but for the stuff that I do, I got to use that cycles, and that's something that I'd like to try out. We'll see if this even works. Will be a little bit. Well, first of all, let's save this. And now, since I'm using an RTX graphics card, let's see how well Cycle works for this. I mean, really, surprisingly usable. I'm pretty impressed with that, actually. Because subsurface is not kind to this. Let's change the radius down to something like it would actually be. And 0.025, just so they're a little bit nicer looking. Oh gosh darn, Cycles looks good, man. Let's see how fast this renders with no subsurf. I've made this metallic. It's faster, but boy, I really like that subdivision surface. Not subdivision surface. Goodness, subsurface scattering. You'd think that it'd be earlier than it is. Let's see if we can turn some quality for stuff down a little bit. Make this like 6. That's a little much on the sub. Gosh darn. Yeah, subsurf. 0.1. All right, I'm liking that. And let's go to adding a camera, Control Alt 0. Let's add some overlays back in. And change this to the render region. There we go. And view, lock camera to view. And one of my favorite things to do that I don't see why more people don't do is you can change your film back. So you can always shoot on 70mm film in Blender, which is just crazy. Like a 120. And not only that, but you can also always be shooting anamorphic. So ratio, not 3. I mean, you can do crazy anamorphic. 2. To set your distance, you can hit E when you're over this and then click there. Now let's see what this looks like. It's a little messy compositionally. Let's turn off depth of field for our previews. Do you want to see like, yeah. And let's change this to, because this feels Instagram-y. Just do a square. A fun thing to do, be add a plane. Let's change this to another one of these guys. Shift F5, GZ, and S. And Shift F3, go back to materials. New material on here. We'll make it metallic. And we'll bring the roughness way down. Let's see how tall this gets. And we'll animate this some. So I'll keep scaling this out. And we'll set a keyframe for our camera here. And since this is so wide out, I'm not going to, or maybe I should. Thinking about whether or not I should do depth of field, and I think I will. So first of all, location rotation and depth of field. And we can just set the focus object to lights. Then we don't have to keyframe that. There's something like 10. And location rotation. Now we'll see as this grows. We don't need to be rendering this. Let's go to a solid. Make things a little quicker. Make sure it's in frame the whole time. Nice, that's looking good. Something else I might do just for goofs is add an empty plane axis. We'll call this camera rotation. And we will parent this. Oop, wrong way. So we want to parent our camera to the camera rotation. There we go. And I will keyframe camera rotation to sure. And start there. Nice. And now we'll get some rotation in here. To add another keyframe for our camera to keep things in frame. Let's make double sure. Yeah. All that is looking good. So I think all that we need to do now is render this out. And well, these lights are a little bright. Let's bring this down to 2. And let's add some color variation to this bagoots. So Control T. Nice. This is if you have Node Wrangler enabled. So we'll replace image texture with noise. Change this from UV to object. And add in a color ramp. And factor. And color. Let's turn off our overlays. We'll make this like an orange. Make this one like a purple. We'll do something goofy in the middle, maybe. Like a blue. And to double check this, we'll go ahead and set this to constant, because I don't think, okay, we are getting blotches of stuff. Yeah, cool. So let's go ahead and set our scale like 1.1. 0.5. There we go. That's looking nice. Let's get big blotches of color, detail, and a little bit of distortion. And just move this around some. Nice. Now we get a little more goodness in there. Change this to linear. And move our colors around until it looks nice. A little more orange in there. A little less orange in there. Just take the orange out completely. Just get this gradient from blue to purple. Just sort of giving us a little bit of variation in this. Nice. So you get like this little blotch of purple there. Cool. I'm into that. And let's change this. Add some anisotropy. Just a little bit of a blurry reflection. Cool. I'm liking that. So there you go. Now all we need to do is render this out, and I think we are good to go. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. Oh, I'll give you some render settings, but we're not going to wait for this whole animation to render because I'm going to send this up to the computer upstairs so I can keep using this computer. All right. So output properties, all of these, this is the right resolution. RGBA, so we've got some alpha going there. Actually, in this case, we probably don't need it, but I'll do it anyway, and then do a 16-bit PNG sequence, and we'll call that good. Because once again, this is just for fun, so we don't need to think too much about it. Oh, also, I'm going to bump the samples up. So, 128. I mean, we'll check in the viewport, see if 512 works as this renders away. Make sure that denoising is on. Yeah, I think all that will work. If it's a little noisy, that's fine. But anyway, once again, I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. If you stuck around this long, you know, good for you, man. I appreciate it. Be sure to let me know what else you want to see. Let me know if you like these sort of longer things where you actually go through and make something that's semi-finished, or if you just want the quick tips like part 1 stuff, because these part 2 things tend to ramble on a bit. You know, they're fun and easy to make, so you don't have to think about it. You just sort of click around until stuff looks good. But also, I realize that it can be kind of annoying to watch somebody just sort of click around and be goofy. If you stuck around this long, also, I mean, I guess either you've fallen asleep, you're doing it on a dare, or you actually dig what's going on. So I don't need to tell you, but subscribing is always nice. Turning on notifications is even nicer. Also, check out meestermedia.com/products. We've got all sorts of good stuff if you want to support the channel. There may be other ways to support in the future, but for now, that's the best way to do it. Don't really think of anything else to say. So once again, I've been Theo with Meester Media. Have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye.